Hi, I'm Rozlyn Warren. Welcome to the Dare to Thrive Circle Entrepreneurial Summit. Every heart-led entrepreneur that I have ever met wants to know how to grow a business they can love that helps people, provides financial stability without soul-sucking struggle and hustle. So I've assembled a panel of experts who have each created a beautiful business that they love, and I'm thrilled to have them share with us their wisdom and insights. And today we're chatting with Nikki Chaplin. As a personal development coach, Nikki is known for the transformation she brings to her clients. Her no nonsense approach to uncovering career blocks and releasing paradigms is arguably one of the most effective approaches in helping those who are stuck to break free, honor their passion, and achieve new levels of achievement. Her greatest satisfaction is in seeing clients achieve what may at first seem to be impossible goals. This includes individuals who are ready to invest in themselves and who are willing to postpone. No, they are not willing to postpone their true dreams until some far off future date when they may be finally ready. Woo, welcome, Nikki.
Thank you so much, Roz. I am delighted to be with you this morning.
Oh, wonderful. I'm so excited about all of this. And you are a powerful coach who brings massive transformation to your clients. Will you share with us what led you into this coaching?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. You know, Roz, I came up through the traditional path. I went to school, I worked hard as I thought I could, then graduated, went right into my career in financial services. And of course, I had a goal. I wanted to get the next promotion. So I worked really, really hard. And after each promotion, I got the next one. And I worked really hard at getting the next one and the next one after that. Eventually, what happened, though, is that I ran out of promotions. At a very young age, I became the senior vice president of a multi-billion-dollar company. But Roz, when you're focused on just the next promotion, eventually you are going to run out of promotions, right? What I discovered was my goal was not big enough. But I'll tell you what, though, along the way, I learned a lot of things because when you're in management, you are also a coach, right? Yes, you're responsible for targets here and targets there, and you're responsible for achieving the objectives of your department and of the company as a whole. But you don't do this all by yourself. You do this amongst a team of people, and the people that you are responsible for, you also have to coach them because you have a responsibility to allow them to grow and excel in their field, but you also have a responsibility to make sure that what they're doing is also achieving the goals and objectives of the corporation. Now, as I said before, because my goal was to get the next promotion and the promotion after that and after that, and I became senior VP at a very early age, at some point I realized I was plateauing. But having left corporate, I wasn't willing to leave all the coaching behind because I loved it. I really, as most of us who do coaching realize, we really love to mentor and nurture individuals. We want to see them grow, and just the excitement that seeing that someone that you poured into can achieve their goals. I mean, that is massive satisfaction. So that's how I came into the coaching field. And I have to tell you, I enjoy every minute of it. And I still do consulting for corporations, and I do consulting outside of my coaching work. However, the coaching work gives me immense satisfaction. So to make a long story short, that was my path through corporate and into personal development and transformational coaching.
How Okay, how to word the question I want to ask you, because I know we have a lot of folks in our audience that they're still in corporate, they're still in the 9 to 5, they're still in the cubicle, and there's so much information out there, and it's really talked about like, well, if you're still in corporate, then you haven't really lived, or you're like there's something wrong with having a career path, and it is a massive step to leave that thing you've built and this identity that you've created for yourself as this person in your career. How do you navigate that to stepping out into your own thing?
Oh my gosh, that's such a brilliant question. I think of it in two ways. And I go back to thinking about how I entered corporate. My intention was a very small intention. However, and I'll get to the second part of it in a moment, was a very small intention. I hadn't realized that even though I was thinking about the next promotion, I could have also thought about it in a much wider scale. In other words, do I want to be best in my industry? Do I want to be best in my corporation? And best as you define it, because best is subjective and is based on what we individually think best to be. So for those of us who are still in corporate, it doesn't mean necessarily that you are in a situation where you're not satisfied. You can be very well satisfied in your corporate role, provided that you have a clear intention of who you want to be, what you want to be in that role, and how you want to experience your life as a whole. So your corporate role can also be extremely satisfying because it can take up the entire portion of your life. So there's no stigma, or we don't have to make a dogma out of going from corporate into private enterprise. You can have a very satisfying career in the corporate world. And for the time that I was in corporate, over 25 years, I really enjoyed it as I look back on it. Yes, I learned a lot of lessons, some of them hard, but they were great lessons. So I want to make the point clear that in corporate, you can absolutely have a fabulous and satisfying and fulfilling career. However, if you get to the point, like one of my favorite authors, Gary Zukov, says, where he says that when you are in tune with your authentic self, if that authentic self is leading you to fulfill a role outside of corporate, there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to be clear that, yes, this is where I want to be, this is where I want to go, right? And you can sort of transition your way out of corporate into private enterprise, or into your own entrepreneurship. So either way, there's nothing wrong with either way. Just, I go back to what Gary said, it's your intention that matters, your intention for your life and how you want to experience life. Now, to go from one to the other, I would also highly suggest that you spend a lot of time with qualified mentors and people that can help you sort it all out. Because sometimes the dissatisfaction that we might feel, it's for a moment. And we don't want to make a decision based on a momentary dissatisfaction.
Yes.
Right? We want to be very clear that if our intention is to be, for example, a best-selling author or a good writer or a good blogger, we want to be very clear about what that all entails, how much of your time it's going to take up. It might fulfill you in a psychic sort of way, but financially, if you can't do all the other things that you think you wanted to do when you become that blogger, you have to be very clear about that. Right? So I go back to saying you really need guidance here to navigate the path if you're going from corporate to your own entrepreneurial journey. And either one can be very successful.
Either Beautiful.
Yes.
One of the things that I really picked up on when you were sharing at the beginning of that was, especially in our younger lives, um, all of these decisions that we're looking at making depend on your desires and where you want to go.
Mhm.
And too often we're still listening to what society is telling us, and or our mother,
Yes.
who who we are,
Mhm.
who and what we must do to be that nebulous successful. And that to me is also a great place where a coach comes in. And I liked your point about the temporary dissatisfaction. Perhaps the dissatisfaction is not so much with the work you're doing. And a lot of times I say that once you're in, like the Buddhist, once you're enlightened, what do? You chop wood and carry water.
Yes.
And so the actions we take, whether that's working in the corporate job or moving to something else or doing both, having your entrepreneurial as a side hustle, if you're doing it to prove something to someone else, it's not going to be satisfying for very long. And so maybe the frustration is simply not that you've got to get out of what you're doing, but you've got to have a mindset shift. You've
Yes.
got to have I'm doing this because I love it.
Yes.
I'm doing it because it's awesome. I'm doing it because it serves millions.
Yes.
Not because if I don't do it, I'm going to starve, my mom said.
Yeah.
So, do you run into that in your coaching, that this is what people are really seeking? And they think it's the geographical cure of, well, if I just didn't have to go to that job, but then we carry ourselves with us wherever we go next.
Roz, I am smiling ear to ear because I run into that a lot. It's the traditional path because, you go through the counselors that tell you, pick a path. It's a lot of pressure when you don't even know what your path should be. You run into your parents who they can be so fearful that you're going to make a mistake and you won't be independent and you won't be responsible, that they try to guide you, and they mean well, obviously.
Mhm.
And if you come up with some wild idea or some wild ambition, they tell you, there's a limit here. And to you now, you're thinking, well, yeah, I really should follow this path. However, if you happen to do that and you find that you're not waking up in the morning going, hell yes, I want to do this job, or hell yes, I really love what I'm doing, or hell yes, I really want to coach this person because I see the transformation, I see how well they're doing, or hell yes, I want to do this research because I know we can solve this problem. If you're not kind of on that path, then you really have to step back and wonder, when they said there was a limit, was the limit real or was it just their limit? Or did I self-impose this limit on my imagination? Where did this limit come from? Those things you really have to step back and ask. It might have been true for my school counselor. It might have been true for my boss. There's a limit to how far you can go in this job, Might have been true for him or her. And it might have even been true for your spouse. And I honestly say this with the deepest conviction. You have to step back and now ask yourself, is it true for you? Really? Is it just true in my imagination? Is it true just because I heard them say that? I can tell you, I grew up in very, very humble circumstances, extremely humble circumstances. And I learned all my limits and my ceilings from my parents. I saw how far they went and I thought that was a limit for me and you couldn't go beyond that. But when you recognize, when you break that barrier, when you break the sound barrier and you realize all those limits and ceilings that you had thought about, they were all in your imagination. this brings me to the quote that said the sky is the limit. Is it really? Or is it your imagination that's the limit? Because you can't imagine that you could be the best in your industry. You cannot imagine that you could come up with a new cure for XYZ. You cannot imagine that you could be happy and be wealthy at the same time. You cannot imagine that you could have your own charity that impacts a dozen students, 100 students, or 100,000. You can't imagine that because of all the preconceived ideas you have about how far you can go. So the question is, in your quiet moments, can you spend some time asking yourself, all these limits and ceilings that you've heard about and thought about and that you've digested and that you've shackled yourself with, are they really true for you or for the persons that you absorb them from? And as the old text says, the truth for you, when you really get down to the core of it, it will make you free, because you'll understand, maybe it wasn't so true. Maybe I just needed to do XYZ. Maybe I needed to invest more in myself. Maybe I needed to be in a different group. Maybe I needed to add a spiritual practice, and that would propel me from where I am. So maybe all those things were true for all those people, but it could just be that it isn't true for me.
Beautiful. So this probably leads us right into the other piece I wanted to ask you is, what do you believe is the missing link between where we are now and where we want to go?
Wow, I can only tell you this from my experience in corporate. And as I mentioned earlier on, it was really early in my career when I had gotten promoted so fast, and I'd gotten, for me, very far, very quickly. And I felt like my career was flatlining. And it took quite a while of self-reflection, quite a lot of coaching and stuff to realize that the missing link for me was that I had not planned or thought big enough. I had not imagined wide enough about my career. I really had not. I remember the first time I had I had a review, an appraisal review that didn't go so well. I thought my career was over. I thought my life was over. My whole world became distorted at the time. And looking back, I realized, well, why did it become distorted? It became distorted for me because I did not understand that what was happening in that review at that moment was one piece of data in a big career. I hadn't understood that. Why? Because I was focused on the next step. Had I been focused on the big picture, I would have used that feedback in a much more constructive way. And so when I coach clients now, I think about who they are, but how big could it be for them? Because there's so many possibilities, so many opportunities, and we need not constrict ourselves to just a traditional step after step after step. So the missing piece, part of the missing piece here is that, yes, we have the traditional skill sets that we need. And, we have all the skills that we need to get ahead. But we really don't have that mindset to open up the lens, the aperture to see, wow, there is more here. There is more sky here than we thought. We don't even know where the sky is, but we say the sky is the limit. We don't know where it is, but we can open up the aperture more and more and more and more as we go along. Yet we have to start with a big sense of who we are, where we want to go, and what's possible for us. And yes. I know, we have the old thing about don't bite off more than you can chew, take it one step at a time. Of course you have, that's a given, right? It's a given. However, it just means that you have your mind, your big intention out there, and you go towards that. So in my case, when I got that review that just distorted my whole world, had I realized this is just one piece of data and where you want to go, treat it as such, use it constructively. Had I realized that, I would have I would have used that feedback differently. But if you fail to have that big, 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 wide lens,
Mhm.
things can really set you back. And a bad report can really push you back, and you feel like, oh my goodness, is it me? What did I do wrong? And we don't want to use feedback in a negative way. We want to use it in a positive way. And we want to use it in the big scheme of things.
Yes. And I'm hearing, reflecting back on the rest of the conversation, is it comes down again to how big can you allow yourself to believe and
Yes.
to dream
Yes.
and to I have one of Mike Dooley's straws, and on it says want it all.
Mhm.
And it's want it all. That's what it's there for.
Yes.
And a lot of things, I've called them pull me forward goals. I've
Mhm.
had in my life that, oh, I want to blah, blah. And I take the steps that come to me, and I take the steps. And when I get really close to it, it's like, yeah, I'm not really interested. And I'm okay with that, because I realize I wouldn't be where I was if I wasn't moving toward that great big goal that yeah, no, I'm not planning on doing that anymore. But it was a pull me forward goal, which is kind of what I'm hearing from you. It's this big grand plan
Yes.
that we jump out of bed every day.
Yes.
Yeah, and I love the idea of the one step at a time, and that makes me think of that Martin Luther King quote that you don't have to see the whole staircase. And it's not so much that it's one step and oh my God, this step might take me 4 years. No, it could take you a half a second. But it's the idea of don't not take this step because you're like, oh, there's 5,000 steps. I'll never see. No, we're going to use everything in our favor, for
Yes.
our favor,
Yeah.
not as a reason not to move forward or not to take a step. And not so it's so fun to share with someone who has the same mindset that we're just opening up the smorgasbord and seeing what we like and what we desire.
Yes. Yes. I couldn't agree more, Roz, because as you move forward, as you're saying, towards your goal, you can help so many people. And let's face it, there are people close to you that could use your help, however you provide it, whether through being some sort of a role model, or how you inspire them or motivate them, or how you help them in other ways. Because I know in my case, I was helped by a lot of people.
Mhm.
Right? I was helped by a lot of people. And part of that is what inspires me to help other people. And beyond ourselves and our smaller circles, we know that just looking out over the world, if you listen to all the stuff that's going on, there's so much that you can do to help, right? So much that you can do, whether in a lofty way or in a more noble way, but there's so much more that I think we have a responsibility because we are in unique places.
Yes.
We are, let's face it. And we can't take it for granted that we are where we are. Not to say that, we're in some high lofty place or the other, but wherever we are in a position to help. And it's important that we also recognize that and use the opportunity to help.
Absolutely. And
Yes.
Nikki, it's been so much fun. I know that you brought a gift for our audience. Will you share with us what that is?
Sure. My gift is 5 powerful tips to make your setbacks your biggest comebacks. Because without setbacks, you won't learn. But we have to not fail to learn to use setbacks the right way. So I think setbacks can really help to push us forward and move us forward. And that's my gift.
Oh, wonderful. So, friends, you can access Nikki's How to Bounce Back Like Never Before. 5 tips for making your setback your powerful comeback. And I love that if we can just gently reframe these things that we think are just the worst thing in the world that ever happened to us, and realize the universe is always working in my favor. It's conspiring for me, and allow ourselves to use them in the proper way. You can get this gift by clicking right below the video. And I'm excited to dig into the tips myself, Nikki. So thank you so much for all the wonderful insights that you shared with us here. And you've been listening to Rozlyn Warren and Nikki Chaplin on the Dare to Thrive Circle Entrepreneurial Summit. Remember, all of our interviews are available to watch and enjoy all week long through September 17th. And thank you for joining us. And until next time, believe everything is possible, trust yourself, and dare to thrive.
Absolutely. This has been awesome.
Thank you.